not vulnerable. They were among the most capable surface combatants afloat. They were positioned to look vulnerable. The IRGC commanders, watching through their scopes from the Iranian coastline, saw three American...
For decades, they stayed hidden, not visible from satellites, not detectable by radar, not reachable by any conventional strike package that any adversary had ever assembled against them. Buried beneath the coastal mountains of southern Iran, carved into the hard sedimentary rock and salt formations of Keshem Island, concealed inside underground naval bases at Bandar Abbas at depths of 500 meters, an entire arsenal existed that the world could only partially map and could never fully reach. Welcome to Navy Pulse. If you're new here, this channel is your deep dive source for the military, geopolitical, and economic stories that are reshaping the world. And what you're about to hear is the story of the most consequential trap in modern naval warfare. On May 7th, 2026, 3 U.S. destroyers sailed into the Strait of Hormuz. They weren't there to fight. They were there to be attacked. Iran took the bait, opened the doors of their hidden missile cities, and the U.S. destroyed what was inside before those doors could close again. So, make sure you are subscribed. Tap that subscribe button right now, because this is the most detailed breakdown of how the U.S. Navy exposed and eliminated Iran's underground arsenal that the IRGC spent 4 decades building, and why the May 7th engagement changed everything. The IRGC called them missile cities, and the name was not exaggeration. Tunnel networks extending for dozens of kilometers beneath Keshem Island alone. Noor and Qatar anti-ship cruise missiles positioned in hardened storage cavities, Qatar 380s with ranges exceeding 1,000 kilometers, College Fars anti-ship ballistic missiles, HY-2 silkworm systems for close-range tanker strikes, and behind sealed doors at depths that no American bunker buster had yet been authorized to target in this theater, hundreds of fast attack boats the IRGC called Red Wasps, stored in underground naval bases carved into the mountainside, invisible to every overhead sensor system monitoring the Iranian coast, according to Wall Street Journal analysis. More than 60% of the IRGC's fast attack boat fleet was still protected in these underground coastal facilities as of early May 2026. Decades of engineering, billions in investment, the concealment discipline to keep every radar, every sensor, every launch system silent and invisible until the moment of choice. That was the problem America could not solve through direct action. As long as those weapons stayed underground, they could not be destroyed. Radars could not see them. Satellites could not detect them. Strike packages had no coordinates to use. The assets existed in a state of protected potential. A threat that could not be neutralized because it could not be located precisely enough to target. The only way to destroy weapons that are hidden is to make their owners use them. On the night of May 7th, 2026, 3 American destroyers sailed into the Strait of Hormuz. They were not there to fight. They were there to be attacked. Stay with us, because what happened in the next few minutes after the IRGC took the bait is one of the most consequential single engagements in the history of American naval strategy. And understanding how the trap was set, why Iran walked into it, despite everything it knew about American military capability, and what it means for the future of a conflict that is now entering its most dangerous phase, requires understanding everything that led to the moment the doors of the missile cities opened. The 3 ships selected for the operation were the USS Mason, the USS Truxtun, and the USS Rafael Peralta, all Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers, each individually carrying Aegis combat systems, capable of simultaneously tracking hundreds of airborne targets, assessing threat classifications, and coordinating intercept solutions across multiple simultaneous engagements, each equipped with SM-2 and SM-6 interceptor missiles, electronic warfare systems, and the close-in weapon systems that constitute the last layer of defense against any threat that penetrates the outer intercept envelopes. These ships were not vulnerable. They were among the most capable surface combatants afloat. They were positioned to look vulnerable. The IRGC commanders, watching through their scopes from the Iranian coastline, saw 3 American destroyers transiting the strait under Project Freedom, the U.S. naval operation designed to escort commercial shipping through waters that Iran had mined and blockaded since late February. The ships were in what IRGC doctrine identified as the ideal engagement envelope, close to the Iranian coast, within range of the coastal missile batteries, within reach of the fast attack boat swarms that the Red Wasp doctrine prescribed for exactly this scenario. The IRGC assessed the moment as favorable. American diplomatic relations with Gulf states were strained. Saudi Arabia had temporarily denied American forces use of its air bases over consultation disputes related to Project Freedom. The political environment looked divided. The destroyers looked exposed. The calculation the IRGC made was that the moment had arrived to activate the sea denial doctrine it had been building for decades, to demonstrate that the underground arsenal was real, functional, and capable of inflicting the kind of losses on American naval assets that would change the political calculus in Washington about continuing operations in the Strait. They opened the doors of the missile cities, and America was waiting on the other side. The attack was the fullest expression of Iran's asymmetric maritime doctrine. One-way drone swarms from coastal positions, cruise missiles from Bandar Abbas, Haidar 110 missile-launching fast attack vessels, ballistic missiles from inland positions. Everything the IRGC's sea denial playbook called for. The simultaneous activation of every element was the operational signature that revealed the network. Drone swarms identified launch positions. Cruise missiles identified coastal battery locations. Fast attack boats traced their origin points from concealed harbors. Every element the IRGC activated was simultaneously a data point in the American intelligence picture of where the network's physical infrastructure was located. The ISR architecture responded in real time. Satellites tracking launch signatures, radar aircraft building precise pictures of attack vectors and origins, naval sensors feeding data into the targeting picture as each threat was identified. The complete operational map of the IRGC's coastal network, the map that had been partially but never fully assembled through surveillance alone, completed itself in the minutes of its own activation. And the Aegis systems aboard the 3 destroyers began their work. What the IRGC's propaganda apparatus subsequently told the Iranian public was that at least 3 U.S. warships had been hit, that the destroyers fled rapidly before the assault, that the Red Wasps and the drone swarms and the cruise missiles had demonstrated the revolutionary power of Iran's sea denial doctrine against the most powerful navy on Earth. CENTCOM confirmed none of these claims. There's not a single piece of evidence that any American vessel sustained any damage whatsoever. The Aegis ballistic missile defense systems on the 3 destroyers processed the incoming attack and executed intercepts with the efficiency that the system was designed to demonstrate against exactly this category of threat. Cruise missiles knocked down, ballistic missiles intercepted, drone swarms engaged and destroyed. The Haidar 110 missile launching fast attack boats that had deployed as the front element of the IRGC's assault were destroyed before they could reach a position to complete their fire missions. Trump described the engagement in the direct language that has characterized his public communication throughout this conflict. Missiles were shot and beautifully knocked down. Drones came and were incinerated in the air, just like a butterfly dropping to its grave. Boats were sent to the bottom of the sea quickly and efficiently. 0 damage, 0 American casualties, 0 impact on the operational status of the 3 destroyers that were the stated targets of the IRGC's most comprehensive maritime strike. And before the smoke from the intercepts had cleared, the American counterstrike was already executing. The targets that American and Allied strikes hit in the minutes following the IRGC's attack were not randomly selected from a pre-existing target list. They were selected in real time from the map that the attack itself had completed. Bandar Abbas naval facilities, the main base of the IRGC's naval forces, and a facility that had been repaired since strikes during Operation Epic Fury's opening phase, struck again, and this time with targeting precision that reflected knowledge of which specific facilities had been activated during the attack. Barman Port and IRGC naval infrastructure on Keshem Island, where the doors of the underground missile storage had literally been opened to deploy the Red Wasps that were sent to the bottom of the strait. The IRGC Naval Police checkpoint at Minab, where 6 separate explosions were heard within 40 seconds. Missile and drone launch positions at Sirak and Bandar Lenge, their locations revealed by the attack signatures that American ISR had been tracking since the first drone was launched. The facilities that Iran had spent decades concealing were struck in the minutes after their concealment failed, because their owners chose to use them. The underground naval bases, whose sealed doors had protected their contents from every previous attempt to locate and target them, were now known facilities with confirmed GPS coordinates in American targeting databases. Even as the attacks were being executed, the broader intelligence picture of what the IRGC had revealed was being analyzed. The specific launch positions, the routes that fast attack boats had taken from their concealed harbors into the open water, the radar emission patterns of coastal battery systems that had maintained electronic silence until the moment of activation. Every piece of data that the attack generated was simultaneously operational intelligence about the network's remaining hidden infrastructure. If you're finding this breakdown valuable, make sure you're subscribed to Navy Pulse and have your notifications turned on. We cover this crisis every day with the depth it deserves. Hit subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The preparation that made this trap possible extended far beyond the 3 destroyers themselves. At least 5 KC-135 aerial refueling aircraft had launched from UAE bases shortly before the engagement. 4 more tanker aircraft were operating over Israel and Jordan. The aerial refueling architecture that allows American combat aircraft to sustain extended operations over Iranian coastal territory was fully activated and positioned before the IRGC initiated its attack, indicating that American intelligence had assessed an IRGC strike as likely and had pre-positioned its response capability accordingly. The 3 carrier strike groups operating in the theater, the USS Abraham Lincoln, the USS Gerald R. Ford, and a 3rd group that arrived in early May, constitute the largest American naval force assembled in the Middle East in generations. Their combined air wings carry F-35C Lightning II stealth fighters, FA-18EF Super Hornet strike aircraft, and EA-18G Growler electronic warfare platforms. On land, F-22 Raptors at Nevatim Air Base in Israel, F-15E Strike Eagles at Azraq in Jordan, F-16s at Al-Kharj in Saudi Arabia, MQ-4C Triton reconnaissance drones at Al Dhafra in the UAE. This force did not materialize in hours. It was assembled over weeks in a specific configuration designed to maximize coverage of the Iranian coastal zone and enable immediate response to exactly the kind of coordinated attack the IRGC executed on May 7th. CENTCOM had almost certainly received intelligence of the IRGC's operational planning in advance and had activated the counterstrike preparation while maintaining the visible bait posture with the 3 destroyers. The trap was not improvised in response to the attack. It was built before the attack, around the expectation that the IRGC would eventually choose to execute its asymmetric doctrine when an apparently favorable opportunity presented itself. The IRGC's commanders saw 3 exposed destroyers and a divided coalition. They were seeing what they were supposed to see. The internal Iranian dimension of what drove the IRGC to attack on May 7th is essential context for understanding why the trap worked. The United States had sent Iran a memorandum of understanding 3 days before the engagement, proposing a 30-day negotiation framework, during which the blockade would be paused in exchange for Iranian participation in talks. The deadline passed without any communication from Tehran. Silence inside Iran. The silence reflected civil war between the civilian government of President Pezeshkian, which understood the MOU as Iran's best available diplomatic exit, and the IRGC command structure under Ahmad Vahidi, which had been seizing civilian authority and viewed any negotiated settlement as institutional capitulation. The blockade was suffocating Iran's economy, annual inflation running at approximately 50%, food inflation exceeding 100%, the Iranian rial at record lows, the Iranian judiciary confiscating more than 200 properties without trial because the regime needed assets to finance its survival. The IRGC calculated that May 7th, with Saudi Arabia temporarily restricting U.S. base access, represented a window where a successful strike could change the diplomatic calculus before the economic strangulation became irreversible. The calculation failed on every dimension. The attack produced 0 American casualties. The diplomatic impact was the opposite of what the IRGC expected, pushing Gulf states further toward alignment with American posture. And the infrastructure that had been the military foundation of Iran's leverage was exposed and struck in the minutes of the failed attack. The detachment from operational reality is vividly illustrated by the scenes in Revolution Square in Tehran afterward. Crowds gathered to celebrate what Iranian state television described as a devastating attack on American warships. Genuine celebration of a victory that did not occur, broadcast to a population whose access to alternative information has been reduced to approximately 1% by wartime censorship. The IRGC's propaganda machine may have entered a dead end. Having failed, it has attempted to declare victory while hiding the casualties from a public that is slowly, through satellite, internet, and VPNs, learning what actually happened. The economic strangulation dimension deserves specific attention. Iran produces approximately 2 to 3 million barrels of oil per day. When exports are blocked, the production accumulates. Iran has approximately 40 to 90 million barrels of storage capacity. Under full production with blocked exports, that capacity fills within weeks. When storage reaches its limit, Iran faces a choice with no good options: cut production and absorb revenue losses exceeding hundreds of millions per day, or continue production, causing physical damage to extraction and transport systems. Both options weaken the regime. Neither is survivable for an extended period. The blockade is not just preventing Iran from selling oil, it is creating conditions inside Iran's production infrastructure that cause damage that outlasts the blockade even after it is eventually lifted. Iran's remaining asymmetric threat options deserve honest assessment. The East-West pipeline carrying Saudi oil to Yanbu, if hit, Saudi Arabia's primary Hormuz bypass would be disrupted. Iran targeted this before, knocking out 700,000 barrels per day before Saudi engineers restored operation in under a week. Fujairah, the UAE bypass terminal, routing up to 1.8 million barrels per day without touching Hormuz. Iran struck Fujairah on May 4th. The strike demonstrated Iran can reach it, but also that striking it unites the Arab coalition against Iran. Bab el-Mandeb, where Iran's Houthi proxy maintains a threatening posture. If activated for simultaneous Hormuz and Bab el-Mandeb closure, two of the world's three most critical maritime choke points would be contested. The underwater cables, 7 major systems carrying more than 97% of Gulf internet traffic. If struck, the Gulf would be plunged into digital darkness, affecting cloud infrastructure, financial systems, and communications. In theory, this coordinated escalation represents genuine global economic catastrophe. In practice, each card carries a cost to Iran heavier than the leverage it provides. Striking Saudi infrastructure brings Saudi Arabia into direct military confrontation. Activating Houthis gives the U.S. justification to execute every remaining military option. Striking cables would remove every remaining international restraint. Iran's threat cards are real in theory, nearly unusable in practice. Without inviting consequences, the regime cannot survive. And the U.S. is positioned precisely to deter their use. 3 carrier strike groups, underwater teams on active infrastructure protection, Gulf state air defense systems at maximum readiness. What May 7th accomplished strategically extends beyond tactical defeat. The sea denial doctrine Iran spent 4 decades building was an unproven theory. May 7th removed that uncertainty. The IRGC's coordinated activation produced 0 damage. The attack wave was intercepted in its entirety. The sea denial doctrine was tested against its intended target. It failed completely, and in failing, revealed the infrastructure that sustained it. The underground naval bases are now fully mapped and struck. Iran's road forward is narrowing. Its military doctrine has been operationally refuted. Its economic situation is deteriorating under a blockade it cannot break. Its internal governance is paralyzed by civil war between civilian and military power centers. Its diplomatic allies have limited their support to unvetoes. The trap was set. The IRGC took the bait. The doors of the missile cities opened, and America destroyed what was inside before the doors could close again. The width of Iran's remaining road is the same as the narrowest point of the Strait of Hormuz, and it is getting narrower with every passing hour. Do not look away. Subscribe to Navy Pulse right now if you want to follow every development as it happens. Hit the notification bell so you're there the moment we publish. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the May 7th engagement permanently destroyed Iran's sea denial doctrine? Or does the IRGC still have cards to play?